So here is a project that I've made in Unity. I'm using 2022. It's simply a 2D project called Helper Project. So I'm going to begin that. It's already loaded and here it is. So we're going to go through very quickly a couple of very basic things, okay? So I'm going to create a game object like this, 2D object, sprite, and I'm going to make a square. I'm then going to set it to 0, 0. There we go. If you don't know how to alter objects in Unity, W is position, E is rotation, R is scale. Obviously, if I was doing it in the 3D view, you would have more things. I'm not going to go through all the basics of how to use the very simple parts of Unity, as that will already have been shown to you in lessons. So anyway, let's reset everything and put the scale back to normal. Okay, so I can right click, by the way, and do copy, property path, things like that here, in case you didn't know that. So I'm going to add a script to the square called a new script. I'm going to create it and call it player controller, player movement. Actually, I call it player controller. And then double click on it. And it's going to load up in here. Now, start obviously is the event that happens before the first frame update and only once. And then update is called per frame. Now, so we're going to move it on a key press, okay? So there are various different ways to get key presses, like key down, key, and etc. But I'm just going to show you very quickly. So I'm going to remove start for now. I might put it back, but I don't particularly need it right this second. And it's quite easy to put it back in. In fact, I'll zoom in a little bit. So obviously, key down will execute once when someone presses the key. So this is good for shooting, hence the one I copied and pasted from the example here. Is space, because they're doing shooting, or they're simulating they're going to do shooting. You can also write key code in here, and sometimes I do that. Key code dot, and then you've got all the keys on the keyboard, and you've got other buttons and things like that you can set it to in the input manager. But we'll get to that later. I'm going to do A, because I'm going to do left. And although this is key down, so it won't do exactly what I want, but it's going to show it to you nonetheless. Okay, so in every object, because it's a class and it's linked to mono behavior, it has some built-in variables. And one of those is transform. And transform is simply the transform of this here. So if we go here, it's simply this. So we've got position, rotation, and scale. So if we go back to the script, we can go transform.position, although not if I spell it wrong. And then that is a vector 3. Now, annoyingly, you can't just go like .x plus equals 1 or something like this, right? Because you can't edit a vector directly. You have to create a new vector and then set it to that vector. Yeah, it is a bit annoying, but there we go. That's just how it is. Yeah. Now, there are two ways to move it. We could... So let's get a copy of the vector, sorry, right? So let's get a copy of vector t, vector 3, t equals transform. Why can't I just let that? Transform dot position, excellent, okay? Now, what I can then do is do t plus equals new vector 3. Well, there's many ways to do this, but I'll show you this way. And then I've got like, this is A. Now, I want it to go left, so I'll do minus equals, sorry. And then I'm going to do a new vector 3, which is going to be, I'm actually going to make a variable now called player speed. Okay, and then 0, 0, which will come apparent in a minute. So I'm going to make player speed. Okay, now I'm going to make it public for a minute, but I am going to change that in a minute. So let's make it 5. No idea if that's any good. Going to mix it up. And then I need to set back equal to t. So I've made a copy of it. I've minus the player speed. Now we need to add something to this in a minute, but I'm just going to show you if it works, how fast that will go. Obviously it's doing it on key down, so it's going to look like when I press it, not when I hold it. But I can, there you go, it moved across a lot. That was far too much. But there's something we'll do in a second to stop that. So first of all, let's change this to on key, because that will happen continuously. Okay, and then we need to multiply it by time.delta time. And the reason we do that is the update will be faster on some computers than others. And so by multiplying it in time.delta time, we're going to get 5 movement units per second. Okay, no matter what computer it's on, it's going to adjust it mathematically so that if I have less frames, it'll move more. If I have more frames, it'll move less. There we go. So you can see that I'm moving quickly there. So I'm just going to pause the recording and do a couple of bits of coding and then show you the next bit. Right, so now I've got a few ways to show you and talk about different ways you can do things in Unity. So here I've made another way. There's a built-in function called translate that will move them. And a vector3.left, by the way, if you hover over it, you'll see that it says -1, 0, 0. So that's the same as here where we're doing player speed for the X and then the Y was 0, Z was 0. Here we've got a built-in vector called left. There's also one called right, which I can't hover over because it's commented, but that would be 1, 0, 0. So I could have done this here. You see this line here? It's do exactly the same as this line here. Because we know that right is 1, 0, 0, if we multiply the whole vector 3 by player speed, by time delta time, sorry, I should have done times player speed there as well, actually. Because obviously that's 1, 0, 0. Then of course that would be the same as that. Now it depends what you like. Obviously it's up to you. These are built in and not needing to be created, so you could, maybe it's quicker, I don't know. Translate is a built-in command, but it does have a slight issue, and we'll see it in a second. And that is that I cannot clamp it. So if we now, because we made that public, that will be now in Unity here. Now, but really we don't want that public. We want it private. But if we do it private, it's going to not be in the player controller here, but we want it here but private, so privately locking it to the only class. The way you do that in Unity is you write that it is a serialized field like this, and then it is private in all terms of how a class works. And if you don't know what that means, then you should look at my other videos prior to this, because you're probably over your head. Then you're back to here. Now just a note that even though you set this to 5, once I change this to 7 or whatever, that's never going to go back to 5. Like it's 67 until I change it back to whatever number, which I'm going to put it as 5. So I'm going to play it now with the translate method, and that's fine. But there's a problem. We can fly off. Now, first of all, I'm going a lot slower now. Because, well, that's very slow. Because I'm not timing it by player speed. I thought I was going slower. So I was going at speed 1. I also should have timed that by player speed. I'm such an idiot. There we go. So we go back to here. Did I save that? I don't think so. I did. But then play. And it should be playing. But I can't clamp it very easily. The problem is. And you don't want to, so I clamp it, so I'm going to put a minimum and a maximum that it can move left and right. So to do that straight away, I'm going to create 2 serializable vectors called min position. And then I'm going to do one called max position. And what I want to do is clamp them. Now, the problem is, if I clamp it and do it after this, it will in fact move and then be clamped. And it's a bit awkward. So I don't really like the translate method. Okay. So I'm just going to use this method because it looks neater and it doesn't create a new variable. And then I'm going to set it. But before we set it, I need to clamp it. Okay. Now, I'm just going to save that. Go back and show you what happens in Unity here quickly. So now I've got a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my sprite to where I want it to go. Now I'm going to set my game to 1080. Right, now you can see it's changed. Okay, so brilliant. Now my camera's moved. So I think there, which is obviously -8, and obviously it's going to be 8. So I'm going to set my minimum to -8, my maximum to 8. I'm not going to worry about X and Y in this tutorial because it really isn't relevant, really. In fact, I'll move this. I'm pretending I'm doing Space Invaders and move it down to, say, there, -3.5. There we go. So now that's not going to do anything because that's just 2 variables. But now I need to clamp it. So I need somewhere here to clamp, right? Now, annoyingly, newer versions of .NET have a vector3.clamp, but here they don't have one. So this is where I'm going to recommend we start to create what's called our useful script. So I'm going to go here, create a C# script called UsefulTools. Okay. Now I'm not going to put it on an object. Crazy, I know. It's not going to be any object. It's going to be a static class. Now, by being a static class, now we can access it. Obviously, we don't need that. Obviously, it doesn't need to inherit from mono behavior. And what we're going to do is we're going to put useful. Actually, could inherit from mono behavior, but no, it won't because it's static. Can't. So we're going to put useful functions in here that that we can use. Actually, I need some of those. So one of them is going to be vector clamp. So I'm going to make a public static. Static. Vector3, good job going so far, called clamp vector, and it's going to take a vector3 and then a vector min and a vector 3 max. Great job, Mike. There we go. So vector 3 min, vector 3 max, and then it's going to return v. Not value because that's Jewish. We'll call it final vector. Okay. And then I'm going to create a vector 3 called final vector. This is not going well. Final vector equals new. Final vector. Actually, no, I could do it from value, actually. Oh, no, I can just return. It is right. I could have returned value and then done it from value. I don't know why I'm doing that. Right, so basically now I can edit value. So now I need to clamp value. So value.x equals it's mathf.clamp. And then we need min.x, comma, max.x. Okay, so we're going to clamp. Why is it money at that? Gives the value between a range. Of course, I need to put in the actual value of what we're clamping. Well, that's obviously, otherwise, how's it going to clamp? So x, comma, so that's y, y, y. Make sure you set this to y. Shift delete this line. Z, 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 Z. Right, so then we return value. Now, I didn't want to send this by reference, by the way, so that I could just change value and it be done, because other clamps don't do that. Other clamps don't send them in by reference, so I didn't want to do that. So, yeah, that's why. Let's line that up. So now I've got a useful tool. I'm just double checking in my brain because I'm notorious for leaving an X or Y or Z wrong. And I'm worried this video is getting too long. Right, so then we go back here and I'm going to go T equals UsefulTools dot clamp vector min pos, comma, max pos, and then do transform T. Sorry, I've got to send T in, haven't I? Because obviously these know what to clamp. Right, and then that will be that. And this will probably be the end of the tutorial because we've got a little useful tools helper now that we can add things to. Hopefully this will work, otherwise I've messed something up. Now, let's have a look at what I did there. Now the reality is, first of all, I clamped it to X, Y, and Z, and then moved it down to minus 3.5. So I would actually want to set the minimum position to minus 3.5 here, and then the maximum position to whatever I want, 3.5. So then it's top and bottom as well. That's why it moved up. I just realised I haven't done the movement for D, which is not the smartest. But there you go. So let's do D, and then we just do plus equals. But I'm gonna then improve this because you may have noticed. Look, what we're doing here. Everything is being repeated. Okay. So right now we think right. Okay. So what's being repeated? This. So let's take this out. All we really need to do on each one is that. Because we can clamp at the end. There we go. Don't want to do it. We don't want to make bad code. There's probably better ways of doing this. So we're adding. Now, really, we probably should add every time and then do left because it makes more sense for our brains to always add and then do left. Remember, left will be -1. So, yeah, there we go. That looks nice. And then we can do up and down in absolutely no trouble. You can see how easy up and down would be. In fact, why not we just do up and down? We'll do W and S, and then that's just going to be up and down. And forward and back are the other two for thingy. There we go, WS. And look how easy that was. You know, now we've got that nicer way of doing and not copying and pasting all the time. Go back here, run the program. And then obviously I can do that. If you don't want to allow them to press both buttons at once, you could do an elif, or you could do whatever the last key was that's pressed, do an on key down and set some sort of axes direction and then check that. But yeah, that's basically it. Looks pretty good. There we go. We're moving around, job done. That's all I'm going to do in this video. So there you go. Just quickly, I wanted to show you what I meant by that script before about having an axes thing if you only want to allow them to move in one direction. So what I've done here is I've made a private integer called -1, And on the key down, I set the axis to 0, 1, 2, 3 based on the key. And then when I'm checking if the key's been held, I basically check if it was the last key that was being held, pressed. So if I go back to Unity, you can see that if I play, I can now only move in one direction. And if I hold left now, if I press left, I'm still holding right, but I'm going left. And if I let go, then I stop, obviously. And now I press up and I stop going. Here you go. There you go, that's it basically. Nothing too crazy to it. There you go. But I'll leave the script up. And then obviously you can look at it.